The text from her bank should have been Alice's first clue that something was wrong, unusual activity detected on your account. But she was drowning in spreadsheets and meetings, barely giving it a glance. That message marked the end of her old life, and the start of something unexpected. "Hey, you okay?" Lydia asked, peeking into Alice's cubicle. Concern was etched on her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Alice stared at her phone, her hand trembling. "My account, it's empty. Every penny. My savings, my emergency fund, everything," Alice stammered. Lydia's eyes widened as she pulled up a chair. "What? How is that even possible?" Alice's voice cracked as realization hit her. "Mom. She must have accessed the joint account we opened when I was in college. I never closed it." Lydia gripped Alice's shoulder. "Call her." Alice did, but the call went straight to voicemail again and again. "I have to go home," Alice said, grabbing her purse. Something's not right. The drive home blurred in her mind. Pulling into the driveway, she noticed her mom's car was gone. The house was locked, and everything inside looked normal at first. Then, she spotted a note on the kitchen counter, written in her mom's flowing handwriting, "Dearest Alice, by the time you read this, I'll be overseas. I needed a fresh start. You'll understand someday. Love, Mom." Alice crumpled the note, her chest tightening. "Understand," she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty house. Tears burned her eyes. Her phone buzzed, and she answered the unknown number shakily. "Hello." A man's voice replied, "Is this Alice Myers?" "Yes, who's this?" she asked. "Felix Anderson, your grandmother Ruth's attorney. I've been trying to reach you. I'm sorry to inform you that your grandmother passed away last week." The room spun. Grandma Ruth, the one person who always stood by her, was gone. "There are urgent matters regarding her estate," Felix continued. "Can you come to my office tomorrow?" "Yes," Alice whispered, her throat tight. After hanging up, she sank to the floor, hugging her knees. A shadow fell across her. "I came as soon as I could," Nathan said, crouching beside her. Her old friend was always there. "Lydia called," he added softly. "She said you might need backup." Alice turned to him, her voice cracking. "She took everything, Nate. Every cent." Nathan sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "Remember when your mom convinced you to skip college and join her business? Ruth stepped in and paid for your first semester herself." Alice nodded, wiping her tears. "She told me never to let anyone steal my dreams." Nathan's voice hardened. "Your mom's been pulling these stunts your whole life, the guilt trips, the lies, the borrowed money." "I thought she'd changed," Alice whispered. "She seemed different lately, more stable." "I was wrong." Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from Henry at work. "Hey, your mom emailed us saying you're on a family emergency leave. Everything okay?" Alice's hands shook as she showed Nathan. "She's covering her tracks, making sure no one questions why I'm gone. She planned this." Nathan's jaw tightened. "All of it. Getting close again, gaining your trust, just to clean you out." Numbness gave way to anger. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked cautiously. Alice straightened, her voice firm. "Revenge. Grandma Ruth always said, sometimes, karma needs a little help," Alice continued. "Tomorrow, I'll meet Felix. Whatever she left me in her will, it's a start." Nathan frowned. "Revenge changes people, Alice." She met his gaze. "I'm already changed. Maybe that's what I needed." Her phone buzzed again, a bank alert. Her mom had just used her card in Singapore. Alice's lips curled into a dark smile. "Game on, Mom. Game on." The next day, Felix's office felt too warm despite the autumn chill. Alice fidgeted in the leather chair as Felix sorted documents. "I want to express my condolences," he began. "Ruth was more than a client, she was a dear friend." Alice managed a tight, "Thank you." Lydia slipped in, mouthing, "Sorry I'm late." Alice had asked her to come for support. Felix continued, "Your grandmother was a shrewd businesswoman. Her hotel chain is now valued at $12 million. Alice's head snapped up. $12 million. Felix slid a document across the desk. And that's just the hotels. There's also her estate, investments, and properties. Lydia squeezed Alice's hand under the desk as Felix detailed the fortune. She left everything to you, Alice. Every asset, every penny. Shocked, Alice blurted, "What about Mom?" Felix's expression hardened. Rebecca was excluded. Ruth said, "My daughter has taken enough." Alice laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Mom's going to lose it." "She already knows," Felix said grimly. "She's been calling my office from Singapore, threatening to contest the will." "How convenient," Alice muttered. Felix handed her an old leather journal. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this privately." Once alone, Alice opened it to a marked page. "My dearest Alice, the fortune I left isn't just money, it's freedom. Use it wisely. Remember, the best way to deal with a snake is to let it think it's winning until it's trapped." Alice's hands trembled as she closed the journal. Lydia returned, asking, "You okay?" She knew, Alice whispered. Grandma knew Mom would try something like this. Before Lydia could respond, Alice's phone buzzed again, an email from her mom. "Darling, I know you're upset, but I had no choice. Once my investment pays off, I'll pay you back double. I heard about Grandma, I'm so sorry. Let's talk about the will. Love, Mom." Lydia read over Alice's shoulder. Unbelievable. She steals your money and still thinks she deserves the inheritance. Lydia fumed. Alice stared at the email, her mind racing. Her mother thought she'd won, but she had no idea what was coming next. Alice stood up, pacing the office. "You know what's crazy? Part of me still wants to believe her. That's how good she is. Even now, she almost has me convinced." "So, what's the play?" Lydia asked. A plan was already forming in Alice's mind, crystal clear and terrifying. "We let her think she's winning. Tell Felix to let it slip that I'm considering sharing the inheritance." Alice paused, holding Rebecca's journal. "Mom wants to come home. Fine. Let's give her something to come home to." Alice sat down as Felix returned with a stack of papers. "Ready to sign the transfer documents?" he asked. "Actually," Alice said, "I have questions about property management, specifically about making someone think they have access to assets they don't actually control." Felix raised an eyebrow. "I assume this has something to do with Ruth." Alice nodded. "Let's just say I'm taking Grandma's advice about handling snakes." She signed, feeling a shift, stronger, smarter, and ready to act. Felix gathered the document and added, "One more thing. Your grandmother left instructions about the master suite at the main house. She said you'd know what to do with it." Alice smiled, recalling the room her mom had always coveted but never used. "Oh, I know exactly what to do with it. Mom's going to love it, right until she doesn't. You're letting her stay in the master suite." Lydia nearly choked on her coffee. "The same woman who just cleaned out your bank account." "That's exactly why it's perfect," Alice replied, pulling up the security camera feed on her laptop. It showed the luxurious master suite. Grandma had cameras installed everywhere after Mom's last attempt to borrow her jewelry. Lydia grinned. "Devious. I like it." A knock interrupted them as Nathan entered, carrying a stack of files. "Your mom's been busy," he said, dropping them on Alice's desk. "I had my friend at the bank pull her transaction history." Alice flipped through the files, her jaw tightening. First-class tickets, luxury hotels, shopping sprees, she's burning through my savings like it's nothing. Nathan pointed to a highlighted entry. "She's been making calls to real estate agents here in town." "She's planning to come back," Alice said, turning her laptop to show an email. It read, "Dearest Alice, I've made mistakes. I'm coming home next week. I hope we can talk. Let's discuss the inheritance over dinner. Love, Mom. Wow, Lydia said, reading over Alice's shoulder. She's not even hiding her intentions. Perfect, Alice said, opening her calendar. Time to set the stage. She looked at Nathan. Can you help me with something? He raised an eyebrow. Depends. Is it legal? Mostly, Alice smiled. Pick Mom up from the airport next week. Make it seem like I'm too busy with the hotels to come myself. Then bring her to the house. Lydia caught on. Where everything will be set up just the way she expects. Rich daughter ready to be manipulated again? Lydia asked. Exactly, Alice confirmed, flipping through her grandmother's journal. But first, we need to make some changes to the master suite. Over the next week, the room was transformed into a trap. Every luxury item was catalogued and photographed. Hidden cameras were placed in drawers, and the safe was rigged to record whenever opened. Tracking software installed, Henry announced, closing his laptop. Alice had sworn him to secrecy about the plan. You're scary good at this, Nathan observed, watching Alice arrange expensive-looking costume jewelry in the safe. She smirked. I learned from the best. Mom taught me everything about manipulation. Now it's time to show her what a good student I've been. Her phone buzzed, a text from Felix, Ruth's lawyer called. She's withdrawing her challenge to the will. Lydia glanced over Alice's shoulder. Of course she is. Why fight for crumbs when she thinks she can have the whole cake? That evening, as the preparations were finalized, Nathan pulled Alice aside. Are you sure about this? It's not too late to back out. Alice looked around the room, now a gilded cage. Do you know what she said when I got into college? Why waste time studying when you could help me with my business? She convinced me to give her my tuition money. If Grandma hadn't stepped in, Nathan nodded. I remember. You were a mess that year. She's never faced consequences, Alice said, her voice steady. Not real ones. She just moves on to her next target, her next scheme. Not this time. Her phone chimed with a flight confirmation. Her mother would land the next morning. Places, everyone, Alice announced. Time for the final touches. They worked late into the night setting up the last details. A closet was filled with designer clothes, all tagged with security sensors. A jewelry box was stocked with pieces to test Ruth's self-control. Bank statements were left visible, showing accounts Ruth couldn't access. One last thing, Alice said, placing Rebecca's old silver mirror on the vanity. Her mother had always coveted it and even tried to steal it twice. Now, it would serve as the perfect bait. As everyone left, Lydia hugged Alice tightly. You know she's going to try to turn this around on you, right? Make you feel guilty. I'm counting on it, Alice said, locking the suite door. That's how I know the plan will work. Mom can't resist playing the victim right up until she goes for the kill. Later, alone in her apartment, Alice watched the security feeds one last time. Everything was perfect. Every detail was calculated to appeal to her mother's greed and manipulation. Game on, Mother, she whispered to the empty room. Let's see how you like being the one who's played. The next morning, Alice watched through the feed as Nathan's car pulled into the driveway. Ruth stepped out, exuding her usual charm. Designer sunglasses, perfectly styled hair, and an expression of practiced remorse. Showtime, Alice muttered, heading downstairs to meet her. The front door opened. Alice, darling. Ruth rushed forward, arms outstretched. She smelled of expensive perfume and false promises. Alice let her hug her, keeping her arms loose at her sides. Welcome back, Mom. Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you so much, Ruth said, pulling back, tears glistening in her eyes. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I was desperate. If you just let me explain, not now, Alice cut her off, watching Nathan bring in her luggage. You must be tired from your flight. Let me show you to your room. Ruth's eyes lit up as they climbed the stairs. The master suite. But that was always Rebecca's. It's mine now, Alice said, unlocking the door. And I want you to have it. Ruth stepped inside, her mouth slipping for a moment as she admired the opulent surroundings. The antique furniture, silk drapes, and gleaming vanity with Rebecca's silver mirror caught her eye. It's perfect, she breathed, running her fingers along the mahogany dresser. Just perfect. There's more, Alice said, opening the walk-in closet. I had some clothes brought in for you, and the safe is stocked with jewelry you can borrow for special occasions. Ruth's eyes darted to the safe and back to Alice. You're too generous, darling. After everything I've done, family is family, Alice replied. The words tasted bitter. Besides, Grandma would have wanted us to reconcile. About the inheritance, Ruth began, sitting on the plush bed. I know I have no right to ask, but let's discuss it over dinner, Alice interrupted. I have a meeting now, but I'll be back around 7. The house is yours, make yourself at home. As she turned to leave, Ruth caught her hand. Alice, wait. I really am sorry, about the money, about everything. I'll make it right. I promise. Alice squeezed her hand, remembering all the other promises her mother had made and broken. I know you will, Mom. I know you will. Downstairs, Nathan was waiting by his car. She bought it hook, line, and sinker, Alice said, pulling out her phone and opening the security app. On the screen, Ruth was already exploring the room, examining everything. Look, she's testing the safe's combination. Subtle, Nathan snorted. Want me to stick around? No, go. But keep your phone on. Phase 2 starts tonight. Back at the office, Lydia and Henry were monitoring the feeds. She's been in and out of that safe 6 times, Henry reported. And she's already tried to access your email on the laptop we left in the room. Any calls? Alice asked, settling behind her desk. 3, Lydia said. All to her old real estate agent. Looks like she's planning to stay. Perfect, Alice said, pulling up the fake bank statements. Time to give her something to think about. Send these to the printer in her room, she instructed. They watched as the printer whirred to life. Ruth practically pounced on the documents, her eyes widening as she read the figures. She's not even trying to hide her greed, Lydia muttered, shaking her head. Lydia muttered, she thinks she doesn't have to. Alice replied, in her mind, I'm still that naive girl who handed over her college fund. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. Darling, could we move dinner earlier? There's so much I want to discuss. Here we go, Alice said, showing the message to Lydia and Henry. Everyone ready for phase 2? Henry grinned, pulling up the surveillance software. Cameras rolling, audio crystal clear. Your move, boss, Lydia said. Alice texted back, of course, Mom. 5:30 at the house. I'll bring takeout. Ruth's response was immediate. Perfect. And darling, thank you for giving me another chance. You won't regret it. Oh, but you will, Alice whispered, watching Ruth preen in front of Grandma's silver mirror. Nathan's voice was soft. Alice, there's still time to stop this. She thought of her empty bank account and her grandmother's words, let it think it's winning. Alice straightened her shoulders. No, she said firmly. She needs to learn. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the people we've hurt the most. On the screen, Ruth was already plotting her next move, unaware that every gesture, word, and scheme was being recorded. The trap was set, and she had walked right into it. The dining room felt smaller with Ruth sitting across from Alice, picking at her pad thai. She had changed into one of the designer outfits from the closet. The hotels are doing so well, Ruth said casually, steering the conversation where she wanted it. Rebecca always had a gift for business. Like mother like daughter, I suppose. Like grandmother like granddaughter, Alice corrected, watching Ruth's face tighten for a split second. Of course, darling. Though you know, I did learn quite a bit about hotel management during my time abroad. If you ever need help. Alice's phone buzzed with a text from Henry. She's been Googling how to transfer property titles between family members. Actually, Alice said, setting down her fork, I could use your help with something. The Richardson account needs attention, and I'm swamped. Ruth's eyes lit up. The Richardson account was one of their biggest clients. The paperwork's in my study, Alice added. Want to take a look? Ruth practically jumped from her chair. Lead the way, darling. In the study, Alice pulled up fake financial documents on her laptop. Ruth leaned over her shoulder, her perfume almost suffocating. See these figures. Alice pointed to inflated numbers. They are interested in expanding their partnership. Fascinating, Ruth breathed, already calculating percentages in her head. A crash from upstairs interrupted her. Both women looked up. Probably just the wind, Alice said, hiding her smile. Right on schedule, Nathan. I should check my window, Ruth said quickly. I think I left it open. Of course, take your time. The moment Ruth left, Alice pulled up the security feed on her phone. Ruth rushed into the master suite, making a beeline for Grandma's silver mirror. She ran her hands along the frame, finding the hidden compartment they had planted. Got you, Alice whispered as Ruth pulled out the fake document stash. The stash contained confidential hotel contracts showing massive upcoming deals. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Lydia. Your mother just tried to email photos of the contract to someone. Caught in our filter. Perfect, Alice said, satisfied. Ruth returned to the study looking flushed but triumphant. Everything's fine upstairs. Now, about the Richardson account. Actually, I'm feeling tired, Alice said, faking a yawn. Of course, darling. You worked too hard. Ruth kissed Alice's cheek. I think I'll make some calls, catch up with old friends. Old friends like Marcus. Alice asked innocently, naming Ruth's former partner in crime. Ruth froze for a microsecond. I haven't spoken to Marcus in years. Funny, because he called the office today. Something about a business proposition, Alice added. Ruth's mask slipped slightly. Did he? Well, I'm sure it's nothing important. Later that night, in her apartment, Alice watched the security feeds with Nathan. Ruth was making call after call, her excitement barely contained. She's already trying to set up meetings with potential investors, Nathan said, scrolling through her intercepted emails. Using the fake contract as bait. Just like she did in Singapore. Alice leaned back, exhausted. Same script, different players. Nathan touched her arm gently. I saw how you flinched when she hugged you. This is taking a toll. I'm fine, Alice said firmly. No, you're not, Nathan said quietly. You're turning into her. The words hit like a slap. I am nothing like her. No, he asked, his voice steady. Setting elaborate traps, playing mind games. What happens when this is over? She needs to learn, Alice said through clenched teeth. But at what cost, to you? Nathan asked, his gaze steady. Lydia pressed a button on her phone. Across the restaurant, Ruth's phone rang. She excused herself and stepped away from the table. Hello. Ruth answered. Mrs. Mears, Lydia said, her voice perfectly disguised. This is Sandra from First National Bank's fraud department. We are calling about some suspicious transactions. Alice watched as Ruth's face paled. Lydia spun a convincing tale about investigations and frozen accounts. By the time Ruth hung up, her hands were shaking. Showtime, Alice whispered, standing up. Ruth's voice pitched higher when she saw Alice approaching the table. What a surprise. I was just having lunch with some old friends. Old friends like Marcus. Alice asked coldly, her smile sharp. The same Marcus who helped you run investment scams in 3 states. The investors at the table stopped talking, their eyes darting between Alice and Ruth. Darling, you're confused, Ruth said with a nervous laugh. We were just discussing some potential business opportunities. Like the fake contract you stole from my study. Alice pulled out her phone, showing the security footage of Ruth photographing documents. Or maybe the forged signatures you've been practicing. Marcus stood up quickly. I should go, he said. Sit down, Alice snapped. You're going to want to hear this too. The restaurant grew quiet as other diners turned to watch the drama unfold. These people deserve to know who they are really dealing with, Alice said, her voice carrying. Should I tell them about Singapore? About the millions you stole? Or about how you cleaned out your own daughter's bank account just last week? Ruth's face reddened. That's not, she started. I was going to pay it back. Like you paid back the others. The families you destroyed. The lives you ruined. One of the investors stood up, gathering his papers. I think we're done here. Wait. Ruth grabbed his arm. I can explain everything. But they were already leaving, mumbling about calling their lawyers. Marcus tried to slip away, but Lydia blocked his path. The police would love to chat with you too, she said sweetly. They are waiting right outside. Ruth collapsed into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Why, she whispered, looking up at Alice with tear-filled eyes. Why would you do this to me? Alice leaned in close, letting Ruth see the years of pain and betrayal reflected in her own eyes. Because you taught me well, Mother. You taught me that family means nothing when there's money to be made. You taught me that trust is just another tool for manipulation. I'm your mother, Ruth said. No, Alice said, cutting her off. You're a con artist who happened to give birth to me, and now everyone knows it. As if on cue, 2 police officers entered the restaurant. Ruth's eyes darted around, looking for escape routes. Don't worry, Alice said, stepping back. They're not here for you. Yet. Consider this a preview of coming attractions. Alice turned to leave, but Ruth's voice stopped her. I really was going to pay you back this time, Ruth said softly. I really was trying to change. For a moment, Alice almost believed her, almost fell for the trembling lip, the tears, the perfect performance of a repentant mother. Almost. Goodbye, Mom, Alice said, walking away. Enjoy the master suite while you can. The real show hasn't even started yet. Back at her apartment, Alice watched the security feed. Ruth was pacing in the master suite, making frantic phone calls. It's been 3 days since the restaurant incident, and Ruth's world is collapsing piece by piece, Lydia announced, walking into Alice's office. That makes 4 investors now. And Marcus? Alice asked, not looking away from the screen. Singing like a canary, Lydia replied. Turns out he kept records of everything, including Singapore. Alice's phone lit up with Ruth's 20th call attempt of the day. This time, she answered. Alice, please, Ruth started, her voice cracking. We need to talk. Come to my office in 1 hour. Alice hung up and texted Nathan. It's time. Ruth arrived exactly on time, wearing the same designer outfit from her first day back, but now it looked rumpled, as though she had slept in it. Sit, Alice said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Darling, I know you're angry, Ruth began. Angry? Alice laughed, pulling out a folder. Let's talk about angry. Here's a statement from your Singapore victims. A family of 5 who lost everything. The father had a heart attack when he discovered what you'd done. Ruth flinched. I didn't know. Or how about this? Alice pulled out another document. The elderly couple in Miami who had to sell their home. Or the single mom in Chicago who lost her children's college fund. Stop, Ruth whispered. Why isn't this what you wanted to discuss? Your greatest hits. Alice spread the papers across the desk. And let's not forget your latest masterpiece, stealing from your own daughter. I was desperate, Ruth protested. The investment opportunity was a scam. Alice finished her sentence sharply. Just like everything else in your life. Ruth stood up and began pacing. What do you want from me, Alice? An apology. Ruth said. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. No, you're sorry you got caught. Alice pressed a button on her phone, and the office TV flickered to life, showing security footage from the master suite. Sorry, I recorded every phone call, every meeting, and every attempt to set up new cons. Ruth's face went white. You've been watching me. Learning from the best, Alice said with a cold smile. Isn't that what you always wanted for me? To follow in your footsteps. The police already have copies of everything, statements from your old victims, Marcus's records, and evidence of your latest scams. Ruth collapsed back into the chair. Why? I'm your mother, she said. Exactly, Alice said quietly. You were supposed to protect me, nurture me. Instead, you taught me that love is just another tool for manipulation. Alice stood up and walked around the desk. But Grandma taught me something too, about karma and consequences. What are you going to do? Ruth asked, her voice trembling. Alice handed her an envelope. Inside is a one-way ticket to a small town in Montana. There's also money for 6 months' rent on a modest apartment. Montana. Ruth looked horrified. But my life is here. Your life of cons is over. Take the ticket, disappear, start fresh. Or don't, and I release everything to the media. Your choice. You wouldn't, Ruth said, clutching the envelope. Alice pulled out her phone, showing Ruth a draft email addressed to every major news outlet. Try me. Tears rolled down Ruth's face, real ones this time, not the calculated drops she usually deployed. I really did love you, in my own way. I know, Alice said softly. That's why I'm giving you a chance to walk away. More than you ever gave your other victims. The office door opened, and Nathan walked in. Car's ready. Ruth looked between them, clutching the envelope. Now, Nathan said. Ruth stood shakily, then reached for her designer purse. That stays, Alice said firmly. Along with everything else from the master suite. You start fresh, or not at all. For a moment, Alice saw the real Ruth, the scared woman behind the confident facade. Ruth stepped toward her, arms raised for a hug, but Alice stepped back. Goodbye, Mom. Ruth nodded once, tears still falling, and followed Nathan out. Lydia came in after they left, holding 2 glasses of wine. You okay? Alice took a glass, watching through the window as Nathan's car pulled away. Did I just become her? Using her own tricks against her? No, Lydia said firmly. You gave her a chance to start over. That's more than she ever gave anyone else. Alice's phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. She's in the car, still crying. Real tears. It's really over. Not quite, Lydia said, pulling out Grandma's journal. There's still one more page you haven't read. Alice opened it to the marked page, seeing Grandma's familiar handwriting one last time. Remember, my dear, revenge might satisfy for a moment, but forgiveness liberates forever. The choice is yours. Alice closed the journal, thinking about Ruth's tears, about karma and consequences, about the thin line between justice and vengeance. The choice was hers, but what would she choose? The small cafe in Montana looked exactly like it did in the surveillance photos. Through the window, Alice watched Ruth wipe down tables. Her designer clothes were replaced by a simple black uniform. You sure about this? Nathan asked from the driver's seat. No, Alice admitted, but Grandma was right about forgiveness, even if Ruth doesn't deserve it. Want me to come in? Alice shook her head. This is something I need to do alone. The bell chimed as she entered. Ruth's back was to her as she restocked sugar packets. We're closing in 10 minutes, Ruth said without turning around. Hello, Mom. Ruth froze, then slowly turned. Gone was the perfect makeup, the calculated charm. She looked real. Alice's voice cracked. How did you find me? I never lost you, Alice said, sitting at the counter. Coffee, please. Black. Ruth's hands shook as she poured the cup. Are you here to check if I'm running cons again? No, Alice replied, sipping. The weekly reports from the private investigator do that. I'm here because of this. Alice pulled out an envelope and slid it across the counter. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to her, all returned unopened. You got them? Ruth whispered. All 23, Alice said. I just couldn't read them until yesterday. Ruth gripped the counter. I believe you about wanting to change, about being sorry. Alice pulled out another envelope. Ruth opened it carefully, gasping when she saw the contents, Grandma's silver mirror, the real one this time, not the replica from the master suite. Why? Ruth asked, her voice quiet. Because healing has to start somewhere, Alice replied. Ruth sat down heavily. Of course. First, you stay here. Keep working. Keep building an honest life. Alice pulled out a folder. Second, you help me make things right with your victims, starting with the family in Singapore. I've set up a restitution fund from the hotel profits. You contribute 20% of your salary. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. Tears welled in Ruth's eyes, genuine ones like at the office that day. And what about us? She asked. That's the third condition, Alice said, taking a deep breath. Complete honesty. No more cons, no more manipulation, just truth. Even if it hurts. Especially then. Ruth gently touched the mirror. Did I ever tell you why I started running cons? Alice answered softly, no. Your father, Ruth paused. He left us with nothing. I was 22 with a baby and empty bank accounts. I promised myself no one would ever make me feel that helpless again. So you made others feel helpless instead. Alice said quietly. Ruth flinched. Yes, and somewhere along the way, I forgot the difference between protecting myself and hurting others. Including you. The cafe lights flickered. Closing time, Alice said, standing. But I'll be back next month if you want to check on me. To have coffee. To talk. Ruth came around the counter, stopping just short of reaching for Alice. I don't deserve a second chance. No, Alice agreed, but I deserve the chance to heal. And maybe this is how it starts. Alice walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Mom. Happy birthday. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. You remembered. I remember everything, Alice said, her voice thick with emotion. The good and the bad. That's what makes this so hard and so important. Outside, Nathan was waiting. How'd it go? Alice looked back through the window. Ruth was holding Grandma's mirror, crying quietly. She's different, Alice said softly. Really different. People can change, Nathan said gently. If they want it badly enough. Alice's phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Did you give her the mirror? Yes, Alice replied. And I think she's finally ready to see herself clearly.